In the deep silence of space, where the stars shimmer like distant diamonds, something was stirring. It had been 500,000 years since humanity's last presence was felt across the galaxy. The great wars between humans and alien civilizations were long over. The human warships, once feared across the cosmos, were believed to have been destroyed, their power nothing more than a legend, now whispered in the dark corners of alien space. The invaders who had nearly wiped out humanity and taken control of the galaxy had forgotten the true terror of those ancient ships. The ones that could devastate whole fleets with a single shot, the ones with technology so far advanced that no alien force could stand against them. Or so they thought. But in the quiet darkness of a distant galaxy, the first signal came through. A mysterious pulse shot across the void, faint but unmistakable. At first, it was ignored. A minor glitch in the communication systems, perhaps. Or so they thought. But then, the second signal came, and it was stronger, clearer, louder. This was no mistake. Someone, was out there. On the bridge of an alien warship, Commander Zarath, a seasoned and battle-hardened leader of the invader fleet, sat in his command chair, staring at the data stream that now flooded the ship's screens. His sharp, alien eyes narrowed as he watched the coordinates flash across the screen. The signals were coming from the outer reaches of the nebula, a place that had once been considered an ancient battleground of the humans. The very place where humanity's warships had been wiped out, their last remnants disappearing into the unknown. Yet, the signals were undeniable. They were human. Impossible. Zarath muttered under his breath, staring at the data with disbelief. His mind raced. How could this be? After all these years, after the warships had been thought destroyed, how could any human technology still be out there? Was there another fleet, or had they come back from the dead? He turned to his officers, their faces grim as they observed the readings. The tension in the room was palpable. The thought that humanity could still be alive, and possibly far more dangerous than before, shook the very core of the invader fleet. "We need to investigate," Zarath ordered, his voice now sharp with command. His hand slammed down on the communication console, sending orders to the fleet. "Prepare the fleet. Head to the coordinates immediately." The alien warship began to shift into motion, and the rest of the fleet, which had been scattered across the galaxy, began to move in sync, drawn by the same signal. As they neared the coordinates, Zarath's ship dropped out of hyperspace and into the dark void of the nebula. The stars were dimmed here, the dust and gases of the nebula blocking out the light. It was the perfect place to hide, and it was here, in the blackness, that Zarath and his fleet would discover the truth. What they found was far more chilling than anything they could have imagined. The signal was coming from a derelict space station, ancient and decaying, hidden deep within the nebula's heart. But that was not what caught Zarath's attention. It was the shadow that loomed just beyond the station, far bigger than any ship they had ever encountered. The faint silhouette was massive. The scanners pinged with data that didn't make sense. It was human. The alien commander felt his blood run cold. His gut twisted with an uneasy feeling. Could this truly be a human ship? The readings were too large, too powerful. But it was unmistakable. The shape was that of an ancient human warship, and it was moving. The ship's engines roared to life with a force that sent ripples through space itself. The lights aboard Zarath's vessel flickered as the immense energy from the human ship's engines surged into the void. The human warship was awakening, a sleeping giant that had lain dormant for 500,000 years. Zarath's heart raced. This wasn't just a legend anymore. The warships were alive. His voice, once confident and calm, now trembled as he barked orders to his fleet. "Ready all weapons. Prepare for engagement. We cannot allow this ship to reach the rest of the galaxy." But as Zarath watched, something even more horrifying happened. The warship that had been thought dead suddenly fired a single shot into the heart of the nebula. The light from the weapon was so bright it cut through the fog of space like a laser, lighting up the darkness. The alien fleet's sensors scrambled to analyze the shot, but it was too late. The attack was precise, destroying one of Zarath's scouting vessels in a single blow. The alien ship didn't even have time to defend itself. Zarath's hands tightened on his command chair as he stared in disbelief. He had seen powerful weapons before, but nothing like this. The human ship, this ancient warship, was alive and far more deadly than they could have imagined. The humans had been gone for centuries, yet they were still capable of such destruction. The implications were devastating. Zarath's fleet had underestimated the power of humanity, assuming they were just a forgotten species, lost to time. But they were wrong. The humans were back, and they were not the fragile beings the invaders had hoped to conquer. No, humanity had not only survived, they had evolved. Their warships, once thought destroyed, had become something more, something dangerous. And this time, the invaders were the ones who would need to run. As the fleet prepared to face the wrath of humanity's awakening warships, the eerie silence of space seemed to grow even deeper, as though the very universe held its breath. The first shot had been fired, and it was only the beginning. The silent return of humanity had begun, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The alien fleet, now fully aware of the terrible truth, moved cautiously through the nebula. The quiet hum of their engines filled the vast emptiness, but the tension in the air was palpable. For the first time in centuries, the invaders were facing an enemy they couldn't easily defeat. They had heard the stories, whispers of humanity's terrifying warships, of their unimaginable power. But those stories were always considered myths, something told to scare the young warriors. No one had truly believed humanity's fleet could still be out there, still capable of such destruction. Yet here it was, in front of them, a ghost from the past risen again. Zarath sat in his command chair, his mind racing as he processed the data. The human ship was far more advanced than anything they had anticipated. It was alive, operating on its own, as though it had never stopped functioning, never stopped being a weapon. It was no longer just a relic, it was a threat. Every shot it fired ripped through space with such force that even the most advanced alien technology couldn't block it. His fleet was scrambling to adapt, but they were too slow. The human ship's systems were working in ways the invaders couldn't understand, moving faster, calculating trajectories with precision no alien fleet had ever seen. Zarath's eyes flicked across the screens, watching as one of his own warships was disabled with a single blast from the human vessel. The ship had been a formidable force, a giant of its own right, but the human ship barely seemed to exert effort. In that moment, Zarath knew that whatever humanity had become in the 500,000 years of silence, they had transformed into something new, something beyond what the aliens had expected. This wasn't just a warship, it was a symbol of survival. Humanity had been brought to the edge of extinction and had somehow found a way to not only survive but to adapt, to evolve in ways their enemies could not fathom. As the fleet maneuvered into position, hoping to outsmart the human ship, Zarath's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden transmission. It wasn't from any of his subordinates. It was from the human warship itself. The transmission was brief but clear. This is humanity's last warning. Surrender now, or face complete annihilation. The calmness of the message sent a chill through Zarath's spine. Humanity, the species that had been crushed beneath the weight of the invaders' might, was now offering terms of surrender. But it wasn't the offer of peace. It was a threat, one far more dangerous than anything Zarath had ever faced. The humans weren't begging for their lives. They weren't pleading for mercy. They were demanding it, and if the aliens didn't comply, they would feel the full weight of humanity's resurrection. Zarath turned to his second-in-command, his face a mask of frustration and fear. Prepare the fleet for immediate engagement. They can't be allowed to continue. We will wipe them out now. The protocol was initiated, and the alien ships began to gather in a tight formation, their weapons powering up in preparation for a massive offensive. But the human warship was ready. Before Zarath's fleet could unleash their final attack, the human ship fired again. This time, the weapon wasn't a simple blast of energy. It was something far more terrifying. The beam stretched across the void, slicing through the formation of the alien ships like a scythe through wheat. In an instant, the ships were obliterated, their shields flickering out of existence before they even had a chance to retaliate. The alien fleet had lost its chance. It was clear now that there was no hope of victory. Zarath watched in stunned silence as his fleet crumbled before him. The human warship had not only proven its power, but its ability to adapt to every strategy, every tactic his fleet attempted. The humans were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting to reclaim their place in the galaxy, and they were doing it with an unrelenting precision. "Commander, we've lost everything," his first officer said quietly. "The last of our ships are retreating. The human warship is still unscathed." Zarath felt the weight of failure pressing down on him. For the first time in his life, he felt helpless. He had always been the one to control the battlefield, to dictate the terms of engagement. But now, it was the humans who controlled everything. The invaders, once the masters of the galaxy, were now the ones running, forced to retreat in the face of humanity's unstoppable return. His hands clenched into fists, his mind racing as he thought about what had just happened. He had seen battles won and lost before, but this was different. This was the moment when humanity had not only fought back, but had returned stronger than ever. The legends of the human warships had been true. The galaxy was about to witness something none of them had prepared for. Humanity was no longer the weakened species they had once been. They were the future. And as Zarath's fleet limped away, broken and defeated, he realized that the old order was gone. Humanity had risen from the ashes, and no one, no alien species, would ever forget the lesson they had just learned. The humans had come back, and this time, they were the ones who held the power. Nothing would ever be the same again. The retreat of the alien fleet was swift, but it was not graceful. The damage was undeniable. Ship after ship limped away, heavily damaged or completely destroyed. The once proud armada, which had dominated the galaxy for millennia, was now a shattered remnant, fleeing from the wrath of a species it had long thought extinct. Zarath, despite the bitter taste of defeat in his mouth, knew the situation was far from over. They had lost the battle, but there was still a chance, albeit a slim one, that they could recover. But one thing was certain: they could no longer ignore the humans. Back on his flagship, Zarath stared out at the retreating vessels, his mind spinning. His fleet had been destroyed in a way he never thought possible. The human warship, a ship that should have been little more than a relic from a bygone age, had torn through their forces with efficiency and deadliness that left him in awe and terror. The aliens had not fought a war like this in centuries. They had forgotten what it meant to face a species driven by desperation, a species that would go to any length to ensure its survival. "Commander," his second-in-command spoke up, breaking his reverie. "We need to assess the situation. We can't afford to let this failure stand. We have to reorganize, call for reinforcements. But first, we need to understand exactly what happened out there. How could their technology have evolved so drastically in just 500,000 years?" Zarath's eyes narrowed, his fingers tapping against the edge of his chair as he pondered the question. The humans had clearly learned from their mistakes, adapted, and created something so powerful that even the greatest of alien warships had no chance of surviving against them. The technology they now wielded was far beyond what any of his commanders had predicted. The humans had changed, and it was clear that the galaxy would need to change along with them. "We cannot let this stand," Zarath finally said, his voice cold with resolve. "I'll inform the High Council. We need to bring every available fleet to bear, and we need to do it now. We'll track their movements, learn everything we can about their technology. If this warship is only a fraction of their strength, then we're looking at a new galaxy, one where the humans are in charge." His words were not just a rallying cry to his people, but an attempt to convince himself. Despite the defeat, Zarath knew that the alien empire's pride could not be crushed so easily. It would take more than a single battle to turn the tide of this conflict. They had been invincible once, and they could be again. The humans had underestimated them before. Now it was time to strike back, stronger and smarter. Meanwhile, the human warship continued its journey through the nebula. The massive ship now cruising toward a distant system, one that the alien invaders had once believed to be under their absolute control. The humans had left a clear message. The galaxy was no longer theirs to dominate. Zarath knew that the High Council would be furious, but he also knew they were pragmatic. They would understand the need to act quickly. The damage to his fleet would not be enough to stop them, but it would certainly delay their next move. Inside the human warship, the crew worked tirelessly, preparing for the next phase of their plan. This was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was theirs. The humans had been scattered, beaten, and crushed for so long that they had forgotten their strength. But now, with the warships awakened and their technology more advanced than ever, they were poised to take back the stars. Captain Rhea Daniels, the commanding officer of the human warship, stood in front of the massive control board, her face illuminated by the soft blue light of the ship's console. The last few hours had been nothing short of extraordinary. They had struck a blow that would be felt throughout the galaxy. But the battle was far from over. "We've shown them our strength," Captain Daniels said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "But we need to keep pushing forward. There's no turning back now. The aliens will come after us with everything they have. And when they do, we'll be ready." Her words were not just an order. They were a promise. Humanity had not only survived the end of their civilization, they had evolved into something greater. The technology they had once relied on was now their weapon, their shield, their symbol of resistance. The aliens had underestimated them, and they would pay for it. As the warship continued its journey deeper into enemy space, the crew began to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. Intelligence had already reported that the invaders were mobilizing, bringing in reinforcements from all corners of their empire. The battle for the galaxy was about to escalate, and both sides knew that only one could emerge victorious. But for Captain Daniels and her crew, there was no question in their minds about what would happen next. The alien forces, arrogant and confident in their superiority, were facing the unexpected, and in the end, they would learn that even the most invincible empires could fall. The humans had returned, not as mere survivors, but as a new power, one that would not stop until they had reclaimed their rightful place in the stars. The tension between the two sides was palpable. The galaxy was on the brink of war once again, and this time, humanity would not be the ones to lose. As the human warship Vanguard continued its relentless journey through space, Captain Rhea Daniels stood at the helm, her mind sharp and focused. The sense of urgency was palpable throughout the ship. Her crew had been through the heat of battle, and the destruction they'd left in their wake was a testament to their power. Yet, in the cold void of space, they couldn't afford to rest. The enemy was still out there, licking its wounds, preparing for retaliation. Zarath's fleet had retreated, but it was only a temporary setback. The alien empire would not allow such a defeat to go unanswered. As the human ship entered a nearby star system, Daniels knew it was time to make their next move. This system, known as Nexus 7, was a strategic location in the heart of alien-controlled space. It was a place where the invaders had once stationed a significant portion of their forces, and it was the perfect target for humanity's next strike. But they had to act quickly. The alien fleet would not remain in retreat forever. "Captain, incoming transmission," her communications officer, Lieutenant Kara Thorne, called out from the console. Daniels turned sharply, her expression tense. "Patch it through." The screen flickered to life, and the face of a seasoned officer appeared. Commander Darren Cole, the leader of a rebel faction within the human resistance. His face was weathered, his eyes hardened by the years of struggle and warfare. But behind that rough exterior was the same fierce determination that had fueled humanity's survival for centuries. His words were not just a rallying cry to his people, but an attempt to convince himself. Despite the defeat, Zarath knew that the alien empire's pride could not be crushed so easily. It would take more than a single battle to turn the tide of this conflict. They had been invincible once, and they could be again. The humans had underestimated them before. Now it was time to strike back, stronger and smarter. Meanwhile, the human warship continued its journey through the nebula. The massive ship now cruising toward a distant system, one that the alien invaders had once believed to be under their absolute control. The humans had left a clear message. The galaxy was no longer theirs to dominate. Zarath knew that the High Council would be furious, but he also knew they were pragmatic. They would understand the need to act quickly. The damage to his fleet would not be enough to stop them, but it would certainly delay their next move. Inside the human warship, the crew worked tirelessly, preparing for the next phase of their plan. This was not just about revenge. It was about reclaiming what was theirs. The humans had been scattered, beaten, and crushed for so long that they have forgotten their strength. But now, with the warships awakened and their technology more advanced than ever, they were poised to take back the stars. Captain Rhea Daniels, the commanding officer of the human warship, stood in front of the massive control board, her face illuminated by the soft blue light of the ship's console. The last few hours had been nothing short of extraordinary. They had struck a blow that would be felt throughout the galaxy. But the battle was far from over. "We've shown them our strength," Captain Daniels said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "But we need to keep pushing forward. There's no turning back now. The aliens will come after us with everything they have. And when they do, we'll be ready." Her words were not just an order. They were a promise. Humanity had not only survived the end of their civilization, they had evolved into something greater. The technology they had once relied on was now their weapon, their shield, their symbol of resistance. The aliens had underestimated them, and they would pay for it. As the warship continued its journey deeper into enemy space, the crew began to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. Intelligence had already reported that the invaders were mobilizing, bringing in reinforcements from all corners of their empire. The battle for the galaxy was about to escalate, and both sides knew that only one could emerge victorious. But for Captain Daniels and her crew, there was no question in their minds about what would happen next. The alien forces, arrogant and confident in their superiority, were facing the unexpected, and in the end, they would learn that even the most invincible empires could fall. The humans had returned, not as mere survivors, but as a new power, one that would not stop until they had reclaimed their rightful place in the stars. The tension between the two sides was palpable. The galaxy was on the brink of war once again, and this time, humanity would not be the ones to lose. As the human warship Vanguard continued its relentless journey through space, Captain Rhea Daniels stood at the helm, her mind sharp and focused. The sense of urgency was palpable throughout the ship. Her crew had been through the heat of battle, and the destruction they'd left in their wake was a testament to their power. Yet, in the cold void of space, they couldn't afford to rest. The enemy was still out there, licking its wounds, preparing for retaliation. Zarath's fleet had retreated, but it was only a temporary setback. The alien empire would not allow such a defeat to go unanswered. As the human ship entered a nearby star system, Daniels knew it was time to make their next move. This system, known as Nexus 7, was a strategic location in the heart of alien-controlled space. It was a place where the invaders had once stationed a significant portion of their forces, and it was the perfect target for humanity's next strike. But they had to act quickly. The alien fleet would not remain in retreat forever. "Captain, incoming transmission," her communications officer, Lieutenant Kara Thorne, called out from the console. Daniels turned sharply, her expression tense. "Patch it through." The screen flickered to life, and the face of a seasoned officer appeared. Commander Darren Cole, the leader of a rebel faction within the human resistance. His face was weathered, his eyes hardened by the years of struggle and warfare. But behind that rough exterior was the same fierce determination that had fueled humanity's survival for centuries. "Captain Daniels," Cole began, his voice firm, "we've intercepted alien communications. Zarath's fleet is regrouping. They're calling in reinforcements from every corner of their empire. If we don't act now, we could face an invasion far larger than the one we just fought." Daniels nodded grimly. "We're already on our way to Nexus 7. We'll strike first. If they want war, we'll give them war." Cole's expression softened slightly, but his resolve never wavered. "Just make sure you don't bite off more than you can chew, Captain. This time, there will be no retreat." The screen cut off, leaving Daniels with a heavy sense of responsibility. The time for hiding was over. The aliens had made it clear that they would stop at nothing to wipe humanity out of existence. But now, humanity was no longer the prey. They were hunters, and the Vanguard was the spearhead of this new offensive. "Prepare the fleet," Daniels ordered. "We move out in 15 minutes. I want all systems at full readiness. No mistakes this time." The crew sprang into action, working in perfect synchrony. The Vanguard was a massive warship, ancient, powerful, and well-equipped with the finest weaponry humanity had to offer. Its engines roared to life as the ship prepared to move into hyperdrive. Daniels glanced at the tactical map that appeared before her on the command console. Nexus 7 was a fortified system, but the human fleet had the advantage of surprise. If they moved quickly enough, they could take out the alien stronghold before reinforcements had a chance to arrive. Minutes passed like hours, the tension building with each second. Daniels could feel the weight of history on her shoulders. The fate of humanity, the future of the galaxy, rested on their actions in the coming hours. She didn't have the luxury of doubt or hesitation. There was no going back. "Captain," Lieutenant Thorne said, breaking her thoughts, "we're nearing the edge of Nexus 7's system. Scanners show a heavy concentration of alien ships near the main starbase." "Good," Daniels replied, her voice cold and commanding. "We're going in full force. All squadrons, report in." The fleet, made up of both Vanguard and smaller, faster attack ships, began to converge on the alien base. The sheer size of the enemy force was daunting, but Daniels had seen their power firsthand. She knew the Vanguard was capable of overwhelming them, especially now that they had adapted their strategies, learned from their mistakes. The battle began with a deafening roar of energy. The first blast from the Vanguard's main cannon sent shockwaves through the space station's shields, causing them to flicker under the immense pressure. Alien ships scrambled to respond, launching volleys of missiles and energy blasts. But humanity's ships had evolved their defenses as well. The alien weaponry had no effect, and the Vanguard continued to carve a path of destruction through the fleet. It wasn't long before the tide turned. The alien ships, though numerous, were unable to keep up with the speed and adaptability of the human fleet. Every maneuver the invaders attempted was countered by a faster, smarter response. The alien commanders, who had long relied on their superior numbers, were now facing an enemy they couldn't understand, a force they couldn't predict. Zarath's fleet had been a formidable opponent, but the humans had learned from that engagement. They were no longer the same species they had been when the invaders had first destroyed their homeworlds. Now they were a new power, a force that could shape the fate of the galaxy. As the alien base began to crumble under the pressure of humanity's offensive, Daniels felt a rare moment of satisfaction. The invaders had come to believe that humanity was weak, that they were just a scattered group of survivors. But now, they were seeing the truth. Humanity was stronger, smarter, and more resilient than they could have ever imagined. "Captain, the main station is falling," Lieutenant Thorne reported. "We've breached their defenses." Daniels nodded, her eyes narrowing as the alien station began to collapse in on itself. The invaders had once held this stronghold with an iron grip, but now it was nothing more than a symbol of their failure. The human warship fired one last shot, obliterating the heart of the station, and sending a wave of destruction through the rest of the enemy forces. As the dust settled and the last remnants of the alien fleet retreated, Daniels allowed herself a brief, quiet moment of victory. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. Zarath's empire was vast, and there would be more confrontations ahead. But for the first time in 500,000 years, humanity had struck back with unimaginable power. The galaxy would remember this day, not as the day the invaders triumphed, but as the day humanity was reborn. With a steady hand, Daniels looked to the next stage of their mission. "Prepare for the next strike," she ordered. "This war is far from over." And with that, the Vanguard set its course for the next battle. The tide had shifted, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The Vanguard continued its path through the galaxy, a symbol of humanity's unexpected strength and resolve. As the battle for Nexus 7 ended in a resounding victory, the morale of the human fleet soared. Yet, in the silence that followed the storm of battle, Captain Rhea Daniels knew the most difficult part of their mission was just beginning. The alien empire, still reeling from their loss, would not remain passive for long. The invaders would adapt, regroup, and come for humanity with even more ferocity. But now, humanity was no longer on the defensive. They had struck first, and the galaxy had felt the shockwaves of their power. The High Council, now fully aware of the threat posed by humanity's return, was already mobilizing its forces, but the humans had something the invaders didn't: unity, innovation, and a thirst for revenge that would drive them to push further than they ever had before. On the Vanguard, the crew worked tirelessly to repair their damaged systems, prepare for the next engagement, and assess the alien responses. The sheer scale of the enemy fleet was overwhelming, and they knew the next confrontation would be more brutal than the last. But Rhea had seen what humanity was capable of. They would win, or they would die fighting. "Captain," Lieutenant Thorne spoke, breaking her thoughts. "We've received intelligence from our scouts. The alien fleet is massing near the Oort Expanse. It's a dangerous area for them to retreat to. They're either preparing for another full-scale offensive or trying to make a last stand." Rhea's jaw tightened. Oort Expanse was a treacherous region, filled with nebulae, asteroid fields, and black holes. If the invaders were retreating there, it meant they were planning something drastic. "How long before we can get there?" Rhea asked. 3 days at maximum speed, Captain," Thorne responded. "We have a clear path, but we'll need to remain cautious. The area is a natural trap for unprepared ships." Rhea's mind raced as she considered the options. 3 days. They had 3 days to gather their strength, refuel, and prepare for what would likely be the final confrontation of this phase of the war. The Oort Expanse was the perfect place for a decisive battle. The human warship could use its advanced sensors and agile maneuverability to gain the upper hand, but it would come down to strategy and timing. "Alert all commanders," she said, standing tall. "We move out in 2 days. We've shown them our strength, but now we show them our resolve. We end this here." The tension on the Vanguard was palpable as the crew worked tirelessly to prepare for their next move. In the Galactic War, every decision, every maneuver, every engagement was a step closer to the end. The time for games and experiments was over. Now it was about survival, pure and simple. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Zarath's mind was consumed with one singular thought: revenge. The defeat at Nexus 7 had shaken his entire command structure. His fleet had been humiliated. His empire had been put on the defensive. And now, the humans were pushing forward, gaining ground with every victory. But Zarath was not a leader who would be easily broken. His pride demanded retribution, and he was willing to go to any lengths to crush the human threat once and for all. The Oort Expanse was the perfect place for a final stand. The nebula's dense fields would obscure his fleet's movements, giving them the element of surprise. He had learned from his past mistakes, and this time, he would not be caught off guard. Zarath's thoughts turned to his secret weapon, the Aether Bomb. It was a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of eradicating entire star systems. It had been kept in reserve for the final moments of the war, to ensure his victory. With the humans closing in on his position, Zerath knew that it was time to activate the last phase of his plan. If the humans wanted war, he would give them one that they could never escape. As his fleet neared the Oort expanse, Zerath watched the human ships on his tactical readout, moving closer with determination. They thought they had the upper hand, that their superior tactics would win them the day. But Zerath had a different plan. His fleet would lure them into the heart of the nebula, where the weapon would be deployed. The Aether Bomb would not only obliterate humanity's fleet, but would send a clear message to the entire galaxy. The invaders would not be defeated. Back on the Vanguard, Rhea's stomach tightened as the coordinates for the Oort expanse came into view. She knew that this battle would decide the fate of their species. They had come so far, endured so much, and now they were about to face the final challenge, the endgame. Status report. Rhea ordered, her voice steady. "We've entered the expanse," Thorne said, her fingers flying over the console. "We're receiving heavy interference from the nebula. Their fleet is somewhere inside, Captain. We won't be able to detect them until they're within range." Rhea took a deep breath. The Oort expanse was the perfect trap, but it was also humanity's greatest opportunity. They could not afford to fail. This would be their one chance to wipe out the alien threat once and for all, before it could strike again. As the fleet advanced deeper into the dark and swirling nebula, Rhea's mind raced with possibilities. The alien fleet could be anywhere. The humans had to stay sharp, stay ahead of the invaders, and be ready for whatever trick Zerath had up his sleeve. They would not be caught off guard again. And then the first shot rang out. A massive blast of energy erupted from the darkness, slamming into the Vanguard's shields. The human warship lurched under the impact, but it held firm. "Shields holding," reported Lieutenant Thorne, but the tension was thick in the air. The alien fleet had finally made its move, and the final battle had begun. The fight was chaotic, a storm of laser fire, missiles, and explosions as both sides maneuvered through the thick nebula, using the environment as cover while trying to outflank each other. The Vanguard's crew responded with impressive coordination, their experience and adaptability shining through. But as the hours dragged on, it became clear that Zerath had one last ace up his sleeve, the Aether Bomb. Rhea's mind raced as the sensors picked up the incoming signature of the weapon. She knew what it was. "We need to stop it, now," she barked, her heart pounding in her chest. The final showdown had arrived. Time was running out. Would humanity's forces survive, or would the galaxy's fate be sealed by the unimaginable power of the Aether Bomb? This would be the battle that determined the future of the galaxy, and humanity would stop at nothing to ensure their place within it.